Thank you for joining us. My name is Marin Sakri. I'm the Director of Marketing for evolv.ai and will be your host today. This is Think CX 20, 6 key CX and UX takeaways from 2021. Sorry, I've got the dumpster truck going by here. Before I introduce our panelists, if you have any questions, please ask those in the QA area and we will work them throughout the conversation as they make sense. A playback will be distributed via email post-webinar and of course posted to our YouTube channel. If you haven't already, please follow us on YouTube. We have tons of other topics posted for your content consumption. So let me first introduce our panel. Dawn Ridge is a self-described digital native and data geek. She was first exposed to digital in 1996 and has been dedicated ever since. Currently working with evolv.ai as an enablement strategist, Dawn is responsible for creating and maintaining continuity within the customer experience for digitally first companies. Welcome, Dawn. And Brian McMahon, we just had a joke about his name at the beginning and then I butchered it right away.
That's pretty good.
Thanks a lot. Brian is a e-commerce veteran and has managed clients across the software, branded manufacturing, and retail space for over 15 years. Dialing in from Ireland, he is currently responsible for managing expert services and pre-sales in EMEA. Thanks for joining us. Chris Perkins is a veteran of world-class agencies, including Hal Riney and Partners, Ogilvy, Arnold Worldwide, and RAP. He has led integrated global marketing campaigns in over 112 countries for top brands and is currently the VP of Expert Services at evolv.ai. When not spending time with family, he is most at home on the water fishing. Probably not this time of year.
True.
All right, so again, any questions, feel free to post those. Let me stop sharing my screen and we'll get started. All right. So let's start by first looking at the current market dynamics to understand how they have reshaped 2021. Brianne, how has COVID and lockdowns contributed to setting a new bar for customer expectations and pace of change?
Well, you mentioned that I've worked across e-com, retail, a lot of different spaces over the last 15 years. And one of the things I was thinking about as we were preparing for this is that 10, 15 years ago, the big focus when I was selling e-com was you got to drive 1 to 2, 5% of your revenue through online, right? Now it's up much higher, 20, 30% online. And with COVID, the focus totally shifted to online. There was bunches of retailers who were shut down, had to do everything online, and their total focus became the online channel. So, it has really driven the retailers that I was working with in the last company I was at. They really focused on how do we compete with the online guys? The online guys are doing a lot very different to us. How can we compete against that? And, through COVID, they had to compete with it. It completely changed the dynamic. You've got 100% of your traffic or 100% of your revenue coming through your online space, and you have to start competing with what the online people can do. So, customer expectations through the store experience are completely different to the online experience. There's so many people who are online, are used to dealing with online, used to the speed that they can get things delivered, the options that they have, the fact that every piece of stock is available online versus what you see in stores where something might not be available. So, retailers have had to adjust to that and had to find a way to bring their online channel up to compete with not only online pure play players out there, but also kind of what their competitors are doing in the online space. And the numbers that they generated during COVID, right? That we've seen, people say 5 to 7 years of online growth just in the last year. Those numbers are being expected to be maintained. The customers that I'm working with in Europe, they had record numbers in 2020 online, but they're being expected to maintain those numbers. It's never a case of, oh, okay, well, people are going back to stores now, so your online numbers can drop. They can't, right? They're being expected to maintain their numbers. and they're being told that you need to find ways to do things differently. You need to improve your customer experience, being one of the key ways that they're doing that. The other thing with the online impact of COVID is that, you know, it's seen major different segments of customers coming online. So previously we would have had lots of customers who were maybe hesitant to go online. You know, personal experience and say my parents did very little shopping online pre-COVID, which, you know, doesn't give me great confidence in my ability as a sales guy, given that, you know, I was in e-com for 15 years before that. So, you know, they really should have been online before that. But, you know, they're online now, doing a lot of their purchases online. So, you know, it's a very different segment, and you have to learn to deal with that. So, you know, you previously had the very savvy online shopper who you could have a very complex digital experience, and, you know, savvy internet users will be able to deal with that. But as your segments change, as the people who are shopping online change, you know, you have to deal with that too. So having the same experience for every customer that comes online may not be the right way to go. You need to look at different options for, you know, how do you deal with specific segments of users that are coming online. I know we'll talk a little bit about that as we go through the session here. But yeah, that growth in online is here to stay. It's not going away. You know, those of us who worked in the e-com space have, you know, obviously COVID was terrible, but the growth in e-com was good. You know, we're seeing lots of traffic increase is only good for us, and being in an AI space, seeing that data increase as well is really important. So, you know, that's one of the key things I guess I've seen.
Thanks for that setup. Chris, what have you observed?
Well, you know, as we embark into year 2 or 3 or 20, it depends on how it feels to each of us. COVID has just really had a dramatic effect across the board, right? You know, also with a lot of the political stuff that's going on, other things, you know, there's a new longing for truth and clarity. You know, one of the things that COVID has done for us is it's forced us away from brick and mortar and in-person experiences. So, you know, in the digital realm, it used to be that would where you might browse or maybe buy, but we're looking for a new connection there that frankly wasn't really part of the digital ecosystem. And so, you know, I think that as we head into the year ahead, we're going to see lots of need to improve that, and frankly, the connectivity between the offline and online experience. You know, what's interesting as well is, while there was a time when a mediocre digital experience, you know, was kind of acceptable or expected, that's passed. You know, the bar has gone up. It's not going to come down. You know, so there's really an expectation that companies are listening, and, you know, and obviously being in the optimization space, it's a great opportunity for us to you know, really push the boundaries on that. You know, and the other key thing I'm seeing is you know, the gamification of the way that people relate. You know, I don't know about you guys, but it's disturbing that I get a weekly recap of how many hours I've spent online. It makes my head hurt to think that that's, you know, how much. It used to be that I would want to see how many hours a week I've slept, and now I'm forced to see this awful thing of how many hours I've been online, and I won't even bore you with how where that's been online, because that also makes my head hurt as I think about how much time I spend on social, wasting time. But you know what, you know, the latest brand that I've seen come on and kind of gamify what is previously was something they had not done is McDonald's, in introducing a loyalty program. You know, it's not like there's anybody on this planet that hasn't been to a McDonald's, and yet the degree to which they can create another touch point, another point of engagement, you know, really good opportunity and a smart play. I think it'd be interesting to watch. You know, and as they are such a smart marketer, I think we'll all be able to see clues there for things that other brands should be doing as they continue to push the envelope.
Don, we're seeing quite a few industries changing their digital business models to get closer to their customers. Can you share some examples?
Absolutely. And it will not be an exhaustive list. And it will be really great to hear from some of the folks who are watching the panel to get their perspective on industries they've seen really impacted. I think to answer this question, I'm going to tie back to both what Brian and Chris commented on. Forrester, who's renowned for having, I think, very forward-looking approaches to data and to quantifying a lot of the business dynamics that I think we're all experiencing. 49% of UK online adults and 63% of US online adults tried a new behavior online during the pandemic. So a lot of new people are entering these ecosystems, and they may not have the experience that people who have been online have had over time. And you would also probably not be surprised to hear that after the dog years that we've experienced with COVID, people are kind of beginning to feel like, at least when it comes to their digital experiences, that things should be kind of back to normal, that brands that are doing business online ought to have it figured out. So in addition to a bunch of new people coming online into these experiences, we've got some people whose their expectations are kind of back to a place or even maybe higher than they were before the pandemic. So what I think a lot of businesses are realizing, right, is that they've got to do things differently. They have to do whatever they can to get as close to their customer or their end consumer as possible. And that can be super challenging for companies that have not historically been truly direct to consumer. I'm thinking particularly here about consumer packaged goods. In a previous work life, I was fortunate enough to be a partner to Kimberly-Clark. And the CPG industry is one that really does have a challenge because they aren't often direct to consumer. So they have to think a little bit differently about how they approach that kind of customer intimacy that helps them understand what these consumers are really looking for, since they don't have a lot of direct access to purchase data. It can be very challenging to get to know, to understand, and to anticipate consumers' behaviors within their ecosystem if you really don't have any firsthand data that you can analyze and monitor to guide your decision making, which is why it's really helpful to have strong, optimization practices, just to be sure that you're learning as much as you can from the experiences that are live in the market. So I think really the underscore there is it's challenging when you're dealing with an influx of people into your ecosystem who have different ideas and different experience and different expectations than what you might have anticipated. And that truly is requiring a lot of change. On a personal note, for years, I had to mail in a check to pay a premium on an insurance policy that my parents took out on me when I was a kid. And I can't tell you the frustration that caused me year over year having to do that manually. Last year was the first time that insurance provider figured out how to allow me to pay that policy online. So business models are having to adapt a bit.
Well, and what's interesting is my parents who are in their 70s, my dad's one-liner is always, oh, these things have a long way to go. And that benchmark of these things have a long way to go has just accelerated so much. So now, like, your expectation in 6 months might be, well, why can't I see my account online? And why is this not connected? And all of a sudden, now that brand is going to have to keep up in terms of their digital strategy to keep that innovation top of mind.
Absolutely.
Chris, you had mentioned in one of our calls financial services, and I think Don highlighted a great example there. What else have you seen?
Well, one of the things that's happening is the context. I mean, this is going up into the stratosphere from a kind of point of view perspective, but what's changing at a pace that is equal to the digital experience change is the context of money. I can't even think the last time I actually had physical money that I used. I don't use it anymore. I literally, it used to be that I had to go to the bank, weekly to get a recharge of cash. And it used to be that, you know, as a child, I remember seeing if you found a penny on the ground, it was, oh my God, this is great, pick it up, it's my day. And if it was heads up, it was like even bonus, you know. And now if you see like quarters laying on the ground, I'm not sure people even think to pick it up, and the young kids wouldn't even know what it is, right?
What
It's
is
not.
this? Yeah.
Yeah, right. Good Lord, where's the app for that?
Right.
But you know, I think that you know, financial services companies are having to really address that context change, right? I had a conversation with a leader in the innovation and research arm of MasterCard just last week, a good friend of mine, and she was talking about how they have massive research groups within their organization that are looking at the context of the way people are relating to money and trying to support merchants in the way that works. You know, a really tangible context that I think we can all relate to is, as we used our phones initially in the last couple of years to make payments, and as the newer phones used facial recognition to open and to authorize a payment, and then we started wearing masks. Wait a minute, now I have to like expose myself, you know, to you know, whatever for a second by pulling my mask down to even get this stupid thing to work. And then of course Apple released a new, you know, kind of interface to try and mitigate that. Still not perfect, but I think those are macro issues that when you get down to it, you know, the context of money and the way that people relate to it is really fundamental. Fundamentally shifting in ways that I think, you know, 5 years ago, many in the industry of finance contemplated, but never at this pace of change. And even, you know, now there's countries that are basing their financial system on cryptocurrencies and are trying to move that way. So, you know, you start to imagine the way that value is exchanged on a financial basis, and the need for not only financial services companies, but frankly, everybody, all the companies, to start to think about that to keep pace. This is, you know, the acceleration of e-com and UX and feature value in websites is definitely rapidly changing. But the context of money is what really drives it all. And if we don't get that really right, then we've got to really reset. You know, if you can't complete an action, we've got a really big problem. Houston, we've got a problem. So.
Well, I think we can agree that from a consumer perspective, the bar keeps going up, but many retailers still have a long way to go. Statista had shared that 2021 did mark that official tipping point for the digital takeover, with 53.9% of e-commerce sales happening online. Brianne, rewinding a little bit to what you were sharing earlier, how are companies deepening their online experiences to go beyond using retail stores as benchmark?
Yeah, I mentioned earlier that, you know, the online pure play or the online customers that I previously worked with, you know, they used to always focus a lot on, you know, how do we compete with the retail guys? How can we do what they do? And you know, they try a lot of different things, and we used to talk a lot about this in the e-com sales pitch. Was, you know, you have to have the web exclusive products, or you have to have something that they can only get online, or you have to have the, you know, configurable product that you can buy online that you can't get in the store, right? And that was a good win for online players, but the thing they can't compete with is you know, the one-to-one conversation you have in a retail store, right? So, you know, that salesperson who speaks to you in the store and kind of can talk you through the details. And you know, a lot of online companies now are trying to do that with things like chatbots, things like community feedback, social feeds that are going into the different pages that they're presenting online in the digital experience. But in a lot of cases, they're taking a technological solution to try and get closer to the customer, but actually confusing the customer, right? So, you know, we spend a lot of time talking to customers where the whole page is taken up with different chat feedback message icons that are, you know, all over the page, and customers can get confused. And as we say, with the different segments coming online, that can actually hurt conversion rates and hurt the user experience, right? You have to get that mix of technology right with giving the right information to the customer. The other thing that I've seen a lot of people, find frustration with, and customers or brands online try to find a really good way around is where and when and how to use promotions, right? There's nothing more frustrating for a customer than going into a store, buying something that's on promotion, and then getting, while they're in the car driving home or on the subway, getting an email saying, hey, would you like to buy this product? It's on promotion. They're like, yeah, I just bought it. I was in your store. That connection between the different channels that your customer is experiencing. It's the same with mobile and desktop. You have to have that experience that flows across all of your different channels. You have to have your promotions that flow across the different channels. And coming back to what we talked about at the start, the customer expectation is being set, by some of the larger players like Amazon, right? Everybody's using Amazon. Everybody expects next day delivery to be available. They expect to be able to flow through their purchase funnel really easily. They expect things to be in the same place. They expect recommended products, etc. And anybody who's online has to compete with that, right? Because if you're not competing with those guys, are going to eat your lunch, and your competitors are going to start competing with them, and using that technology and using the data that's available now to start making those decisions. And that's the expectation, and it's not going to go any way with more of an expectation from customers to have everything that they need in their digital experience.
So Brian, taking what you said a step further, Chris, what recommendations do you have to push that?
Yeah, I mean, the thing I think all brands always have to be reminding themselves, and when we're talking about brands that are shifting so much of their focus in the digital realm to accelerating the richness of features and the completeness of the experiences, to really be sure to stay on brand. There's an enormous rush to try and facilitate the purchase and to take the noise out of the system, but even Amazon does, in their own kind of unique brand flavor, is very, very cognizant of how to create that experience in a way that's brand true, and staying true to that is really essential. So I guess the overarching message is pace yourself on the change and innovation. Be true to brand. Make sure that you're focusing on a really good customer experience over doing feature creep and expanding pages and volume of things you can do. Get it right, measure twice, cut once, kind of a thing. To take that a bit further, there's the latest version or one of the latest versions of kind of an industry focal point. 10 years ago, 5 years ago, whatever you want to call it, big data was the thing. And now it's AR and enriched experiences and chatbots and metaverse solutions, audio layers, even doing promos with NFTs and all kinds of other things. I think you have to be really careful that that's brand appropriate. Be sure that experience is really on brand and appropriate to move the customers along, and to give them something to advocate for. So much of what featureitis and shiny object stuff can do is get in the way and actually ward off people if you rush to it too quickly. So I think that's an overarching thing that I think we're seeing brands that have. There's definitely some brands that have gotten it wrong. I won't pick on them here, but there's very few, unfortunately, that've gotten it super, super right. But I think being cautious and brand true is the overarching thing to take away.
Dawn, you had shared some positive frictionless brand experiences. Can you highlight some of those?
Absolutely. I'll share one that I've experienced as a customer myself, which I think echoes a little bit of what both Brian and Chris were observing. I think Chris was talking about how important it is to kind of stay true to your brand. And I think we could even take that a step further and say that the customer experience has to feel like it's the brand. It can't be dissociated from the brand, the way the brand presents itself in the world. And having a brand purpose and then fulfilling that brand purpose in the actual experience that customers have with you is really important, because if they don't feel like they're actually interacting, like, why are they going to go through the process? They can always find online another source for whatever it is that they're seeking out. And there's a clothing, I won't even call them a retailer, they're more of an aggregator. They're like the world's largest online thrift. It's ThredUp. And the big thing about ThredUp that they have consistently advocated over time is that shopping secondhand, if you will, is a much better thing to do for the sake of the planet. There's a lot of sustainability messaging that ThredUp sites. And so when they recently changed their shipping experience, initially I was not very happy with that, because I thought, wait a second, it's going to take longer for me to get my product. But then I checked myself and I looked at it through the lens of what the brand stood for. And I realized that the reason they did what they did was to stay true to their brand's purpose of creating a more sustainable experience. Instead of shipping from multiple warehouses, they shipped from one place. And that definitely reduced the carbon footprint that I was inadvertently putting into the world. So as a consumer, experiences like that can either really make you feel better about the brand that you're engaging with and doing business with, or they can be unsettling if they're not connected.
Thanks for setting up the context on those trends. I want to explore some of the new capabilities companies have developed, especially the concept of culture of experimentation. We've all been forced into the digital space. Chris, how have you seen that take shape, specifically the optimization muscle taking focus?
Yeah, it's interesting because the way that companies were forced into using digital much more completely, even in store, right? So, I think we can all recognize that whether it's ATM screens or, even the interactive screens at gas pumps or, a mobile or desktop experience, the companies have rushed to offer lots of features there. So what what we're seeing now is more and more of them saying, okay, how's that working? Like, obviously it was a go-to, and the best customers were happy to kind of muscle through that marginal first experience. And the good news, we're seeing companies embrace the notion of improvement, refinement, and optimization, and certainly something that's our core focus. But the culture of experimentation, in some respects, it gets what I would call lip service, or it's kind of like the old adage of research. When you need an answer, I've got a research instrument that'll give it to you. Exactly the way I want it. So we're seeing some actually situations where there's a fair amount of, boy, can we do this whole homepage redesign, and here it is, and let's A/B test that. And frankly, the opportunity that we bring to the table is the ability to actually pull that apart and create variants that allow us to test and optimize that. But philosophically, it's a conversation that we're struggling to have, or working to have with our partner customers, and advocating across the industry, that everybody think about is what's the smarter way to do that to really represent the real customer experience that's optimal. And culturally, that's it's a change, right? There's a change from, we didn't do testing, we just introduced new designs. The next version of that was A/B testing, and then kind of multivariate testing on a baseline. With some level of expansion there, and now with continuous optimization and the ability that we have and offer to our customers, the culture of helping people pass those obstacles to a more rich and complete way of finding the truth through the eyes of the user is really essential. But it's a journey, and one that we work hard to try and support.
Dawn, do you have any further sentiment on this topic?
Yeah, it's I think one of the things that I hope everyone that's listening would probably have a lot of empathy for is that at some point you have to ask yourself, is it done yet? Like, is it done? Is it right? Is it ready? And I think that the thing that we have to adjust to is that the journey is 1% finished all the time. Customer behavior is always changing and evolving. New things are happening, which are forcing them to think differently about who they work with, what brands they're partnered with, where they buy their stuff. And I think that it's very challenging, I think, for most brands and most marketers, because at some point we crave a sense of like almost closure. We've got this beautiful brand. It's being brought to life online across our entire ecosystem. And we know we've done it. We've cracked the experience. But I think the reality is, for all the reasons we've been talking about, it's never finished. And I think it's something that I think the way that we approach optimization is very well suited to delivering. But the challenge is kind of getting over the desire for it to be done, for lack of a better expression.
And I think that one thing I'd add is, the larger players, the guys at the top of this, they're all doing it, right? So if you're not experimenting, constantly experimenting, you're falling behind, right? That's what the larger players have already found out, and we all need to go the same way.
And Brian, you never really know when you're going to uncover the thing. Your hypothesis about what it was that was causing something might not actually be true, and something completely different may have caused it. So it helps to be continuously optimizing so that you can unearth those insights.
Chris, let's dig a little deeper in the area of personalization, which now seems to be a board level topic. Can you shed some light as to why it's becoming so important?
Well, given the reliance on digital experiences to close that gap from a sales perspective, we're now seeing, it would be in the past, you certainly could create lots of different brick and mortar experiences, right? A neighborhood Walmart store versus a big mega store. You could create and curate those experiences in a very clear way. So the need to do the same thing online is critical. What's interesting though is and I refer to big data as kind of one of those buzzwords. Personalization is also one of those buzzwords as of late. And the notion of creating a personalized experience is, I think, at its core, probably similar in the way it's being used. But it's interesting how companies tilt it. And we've listened to several leaders in major organizations do their analyst calls or their quarterly updates. And it's interesting how they tilt the version of personalization. But in the end, if we don't put consumers on a pedestal as the ones in control of our destiny, and really serve them and focus on experiences that are really rich and true and consistent and repeatable, then we always run the risk that is something that will let them down. And at the same time, we have to walk that line between serving them in a very unique and personalized way and not being creepy, which I think we can all think back to instances where creepiness is cropped into our digital experience life.
Dawn, can you talk a little bit about the omnichannel experience as it relates to personalization?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that can really, and Brian mentioned it a little bit earlier about how it's very jarring to interact in one channel and then have an interaction in a different channel that suggests that that brand doesn't really get you, or it doesn't understand that you're the same person that you were when you were in the store purchasing a product, and now you're going online, and let's say you might be looking for something to put with it, and suddenly you're just this unknown number or tag ID in an experience. And it just, I agree with Chris's point about you don't want it to become creepy, and people now have a lot more control over what they allow brands and marketers to know about them than ever before. But there is something to be said for if I'm having an experience with a brand that I have opted into, that I've chosen to be part of, being recognized throughout that ecosystem is going to matter to me because I've made the decision to allow that to happen. And it almost feels like rejection when the brand doesn't kind of follow you back, if you will. So I think that's happening a lot. And, we talked about, the beauty of online is that you have a lot of options, an almost exhaustive amount of options. So it's really, you don't want to lose that person that's willing to connect with you because you're not able to connect with them back, or your technology or your ecosystem doesn't permit it.
Brianne, you had mentioned there was I think it was a Giphy or graphic that you shared with Prince versus Ozzy. Can you talk a little bit about that and the demographics?
Yeah, it's something an old boss of mine used to say, that no CEO wakes up in the morning and wants to buy AI, right? It has to be use case specific. And I think personalization is a similar type of thing. People are all very interested in personalization, but they got to figure out the right way to use personalization, right? There's a great meme going around of if your segment is a male born in 1948 who's married twice, lives in a castle and is really famous, you'll be selling to Ozzy Osbourne and Prince Charles, right? Very different segments. Personalization has to be used in the correct way. We were at an event in London a few weeks ago, and we had on our board behind us, personalization as being one of our watchwords. And it drew people in, and people's thoughts on personalization were completely varied, right? Totally different people asking different questions about personalization. Lots of people only thought of it as recommendations, recommendation engine, versus, using, auto segmentation to figure out the right, type of experience to show it to customers. It's a really broad term, and, there has to be a process around it, and there has to be thought put into it as to how to use it. You can't just wake up in the morning and say, I want to buy personalization, let's get that going. It has to be something that becomes a strategic imperative for a brand or a customer, and you have to put the plans around it as to how to use it correctly and put it in place. That's kind of, and we've seen some customers really engage with that, and some other customers, and brands online who try to do it and do it badly. So there's a range of outcomes. So we just have to focus on using personalization, but using it in the right way and making the best of it.
It goes without saying that this is contributing to some major organizational changes across companies. Brianne, can you walk us through some of those changes, and especially the need to improve upon collaboration?
Yeah, I think we've talked about a few of them on the call today. The fact that online growth has skyrocketed. The online teams in a lot of the customers I speak to haven't really grown alongside the growth in what they're doing, and they're being asked to do more with less. They're being asked to take experimentation or UX on as part of their roles and focus on that. And a lot of the brands I've certainly spoken to are looking at kind of different ways of doing that, because experimentation and what we've talked about finding that best possible UX to show a customer. It's a journey, that customers need to go on. There's quite, a lot that can be done there, and customers need to collaborate with, their internal teams, gather customer feedback, use third parties. There's lots of different strings to that bow that customers need to kind of investigate and find the best way to do it. What I've certainly seen, and I think I mentioned this earlier, is that there are a lot of people who are using kind of technology to try and solve for what they see as experimentation, or how do I use that technology, or what do I input onto the site? But that can take away from the customer experience. So it needs to be tackled in the correct way, and there's definitely a process that people need to go through to kind of embed experimentation within their overall kind of structure of as a company, right? This is going to be an important thing that we look towards. How do we think about our customer experience digitally, and how do we continue to evolve that experience and get to the best possible experience, not just for Prince Charles, but for Ozzy Osbourne as well, you know, and then whoever else is coming to the site, you know, that needs to be the focus.
And Brian, one of the things that I'm particularly excited about is how, you know, the insights that we learn from our personalization efforts are of interest and frankly of relevance to a broader cross-section of people within organizations, from the CTO and the digital team all the way through to the CMO and CEO as they work on these initiatives. In fact, even the sustainability efforts of companies are thinking about this stuff, which is really, really exciting. So definitely, we've only just begun down that route as you know, certainly doing it very successfully, but as personalization becomes an imperative, you know, it's exciting to see that there's more interest across the C-suite and organizations as a whole.
All right, well, we are just about at time. I just want to say thank you so much for your time. This has been a fun and insightful panel. Check out Think CX episodes 1 through 19 at evolv.ai, and we're always open to recommended topics. So peruse those, and if there's anything you would like to join in on, definitely send an email over to hello@evolv.ai. Thanks so much, and everyone have a safe and happy holidays.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.